Transmedicalism, Hunter Schafer, non-binary people versus binary people. I just spent so much time arguing with my neighbor about aliens. Okay. So I think really where this all stems from is Canada. I remember saying a long time ago, it's interesting how your disposition will change as need be. But I remember saying a long time ago that I don't take any issue really with non-binary people being lumped into the trans spectrum. Because in a way they do transition. But conversely, at the same time too, it's like they also do not need to do any transition, right? And we are different, right? We are different in our in that for non-binary people, there can be somewhat of a transition to no transition. With trans people, right, we aim to transition as best as possible. For different reasons, like dysphoria. Like, dysphoria and dysmorphia are two different things. So dysmorphia is like, I hate my body because I'm chubby, right? Dysphoria is like, I wish I was dead, right? Because my brain does not align with my body, or why my brain thinks that I have this gender type of dyslexia going on, you know, is too much for me to manage, right? The issue being between non-binary people, they types, two-spirit, etc., versus binary people, right, is that we require surgeries, right, in order to be able to contend with this dysphoria. And this dysphoria is very real. This dysphoria, like, very much rules your life. Like, logically, if I did not have, like, the reason sometimes why I have such a hard time making it out the apartment, right, to do things is because it takes me so long to try to make sure that everything is perfect, that somebody's not going to come up to me and say, hey bro, hey dude, hello sir, right? And when I cannot accomplish that, right, you know, is this huge, like, horrible moment, you know, that happens to me where it's like, I am super embarrassed, right? Super depressed, you know, super angry, and all these sort of things I've been dealing with, contending with, come flooding in at once, right? And it amounts to depression, right? It amounts to depression, and some people, it amounts to suicide. Whereas with a non-binary person, like the very classic example of the person with a beard and chest hair and breasts, right? They do not have that same issue. They do not have that same issue. We are two different types of people. You know, another way maybe thinking of it, like, all government is government. All governments are the same. Thus, all governments are one government. All governments are not one government, right? All governments have very different points of view upon what a government is or should do, right? Hence, they are all different forms of government, yet they are all forms of government. Just like non-binary people, cis people, people who transition, you know, are all people. Right? You can even make the argument that, like, a person looking to attain Buddhahood is a person who's aiming to transition. Right? But the difference is between, like, I do not know any non-binary stories where they're like, you know, I'm going to go home and I'm going to eat a bottle of antidepressants and try to kill myself, right? Because I got misgendered today, right? Now, do I discredit non-binary people? Absolutely not, right? I do not discredit them nor mock them, right? And if you look at Hunter Schafer's comments, you know, which was not one, not two, not three, but 4 exclamation marks. You know, like, neither is she discrediting them, right? But if you called her they, she'd probably get very irate, right? You know, or she would pretend like it doesn't faze her in the slightest, or something like that, right? But this is not how she identifies, any more than my mother does not identify as a they, right? You know, or lesbian. Like, a lot of people like to say that my mother, think that my mother is lesbian, but my mother is as far as I know, is not and never has been lesbian. But the whole issue is that, like, you have the Republicans, for example, and you could have probably other governments doing the exact same thing, crashing in, capitalizing upon the idea of combining non-binary people and binary people who transition, right? And saying these people are exactly the same. Now, I don't think our government, I don't think the Trudeau government literally intended to make it look like that. I think what what the Trudeau government tried to do in Canada is taking the two-spirit idea, you know, of Indigenous people, right? Mash that in with non-binary, mash that in with people who transition, right? You know, and build a strength there. I think the point, the idea of this, because they had this ad with The Amazing Race, and they had these 2 First Nation man and person. I don't know what their gender was. Like, they didn't necessarily look like non-binary types to me, or what I would conceptualize as being two-spirit. So I don't know what their gender identity is, right? But they're in the LGBT spectrum, you know. I assume, you know, and basically they're basically a gay male homosexual couple, right? For all intents and purposes. We're still recording? Okay. Sorry, new camera struggles. And they're trying to associate this to something that is common knowledge, to kind of solidify things, because it's kind of beneficial in that way, because there's strength in numbers, and it's very much true. Like, part of the reason why I do not have trouble, you know, having non-binary people identify as being transgenders, is because there's strength in numbers. Should I not support them? Like, why should I not support them so that they can be who they are and be accepted in society and be happy and live fulfilling lives and all that jazz? Just like, why should they not support people like me, right? Or why should we not support gay and lesbian and bisexual people, and so forth, right? That's kind of a major point of the LGBT spectrum. But the issue is that, like, our healthcare what the Republicans are doing in the US is attempting to lump us all in as one, as to discredit, you know, transitioning. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of girls who transition, or a lot of trans men who transition, right? You know, they're out there walking the streets among you, and you have no clue because they transitioned. Right? Think about it sometime. Do a little experiment. Look around you. Right? Pick out the ones who are male and female by birth. You might think you know, but you don't know 100%, right? However, can you pick out a non-binary person? Quite easily. Typically. Right? If they have a month's worth of beard and chest hair and breasts, chances are they're non-binary. Like, to me, that is a nightmare. You know, to me, that is like being gay versus being straight. To me, that is like gay sex. Like the idea of having gay sex with a gay man freaks me out. It makes me super uncomfortable, right? Because I'm not a gay dude. Everyone shoves that label off onto me, but I'm not a gay dude. Nor am I a non-binary person. I'm very binary, right? Like I identify as being female. I don't even identify as being transgender, because I saw this shit coming a long time ago, and I was like, okay, time to fix that. I'm no longer transgender. I'm no longer adopting this title as a common colloquialism, because that's what the term is. It is a colloquialism. Transgenderism, right? You know, and the struggle, right, to transition successfully, to make your way through the world successfully, is immense. It truly is immense. It costs a lot of money, right? But anyone can be non-binary. Non-binary can mean basically anything, right? There is almost no boundary on what non-binary is. Non-binary is very queer, right? You never hear me use the word queer in relation to me. You hear lesbians use the term queer, right? But because that is a different aspect. That's like, you know, like I have a different sexuality. My sexuality to you is queer, right? It seems queer, odd, weird, you know, to you. But to me, this is normal. This is my sexuality. And using the word queer is like using the N-word. It's like empowering, right? But for me, queer is the last thing that I want to be. Non-binary is the last thing that I want to be, right? All that someone like me wants to do is successfully transition and be myself, right? Does that mean that I should deny the fact that I at one time was born with a sheeness, or the one time I conformed to being male, right? I'm not doing that. I'm not denying that that happened, but I transitioned, right? And even regardless of the entire world telling me otherwise, right? I'm telling the entire world otherwise. I do not care what you think, right? This is how it is, right? It cannot be any other way for me. I'm female. It cannot be any other way for me. Initially, when I first transitioned, and there have been a lot of changes since I first transitioned, initially my big issue was like, can I actually do it? What if I can't even get on hormones? What if I'm barred from getting on hormones, right? Would I have actually transitioned? I don't think so, right? But should my ability to identify be taken away from me? My ability to identify as being female taken away from me? That's a bit of a problem, isn't it? Right? And so I have always been inclusive of and supportive of people who are non-binary, or people who identify as being a transvestite, a transsexual, a trans girl, a transgender, you know, whatever, right? You know, as long as you don't identify as being a jihadi terrorist, you know, and you're just a normal person, I do not see why it is that you should not be allowed to exist as you say you exist and as you identify, right? If you are a Chinese person who identifies as being American, who am I to say otherwise, right? If you are a black person who grew up in China and you identify as being Chinese, who am I to tell you otherwise, right? Because you are far more Chinese than I will ever be. The same is true of me. Right? Is there not an aspect of transgenderism? Right? Is there not an aspect of transgenderism that is very much more prominent in being non-binary than, say, being someone who transitioned? Some people equate non-binary as being transgender, right? I do not. I do not. You know, I do not discredit like a lesbian who has not had bottom surgery, who has cut off her breasts, right? And identifies as being a he, a male, right? I take no issue with that. However, if we have a trans girl who's been on hormones for 10 years of her life, has had bottom surgery, you know, it's like, that bitch can't come in this washroom. Right? That is a man. That is a gay man. That's a gay dude. Gay dude, predator, pervert, mutant, blah, 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 right? But do I apply this to a lesbian who simply had a double mastectomy and identifies as being male? No. I'm sure a point in time is going to come in the split, right? Where, you know, the reason why people like me have come into existence, right, is because a movement happened, right? Just the same as a movement of starting like maybe since the 70s, where gay people are becoming more open and coming out of the closet. It's kind of the same thing with people like me, but just in the modern era. Right? I don't think this number is going to vastly grow and grow and grow with trends and whatnot, right? You know, one of the good things about non-binary people is that non-binary people break down the binary, right? Non-binary people will make life in some ways easier for me because they break down this binary. They will make life easier for a man, you know, who had a homosexual experience, right? And needs to just accept the fact that this happened and it's natural and they're moving on in life. Right? Or they have this like 1% of them that is mildly attracted to just this one type of male or something. You know, it makes life much easier for them. Or, you know, we're not going to ridicule a child because the child likes to wear pink. Right? Or have this staunch binary of like male, female. You know, if you look at, I would not say, if you look at transgenderism is probably very much a backlash, you know, to this staunch black and white, you know, male, female type of idea, right? And that's a good thing, right? That needs to mellow the F out. Right? This is way too overboard, right? It's ridiculous, you know, to the point that like males will intimidate and mock or beat another child because they're slightly effeminate or because they wore a pink t-shirt that day or something. Like that kind of crap needs to change in our existence, you know? Just like there needs to be more acceptance towards people like me. You know, did transgenderism or non-binaryism, transgenderism and non-binaryism, you know, make things a little bit easier for me? Yes. And also make things harder. Happen at the exact same time. You know, was there not a wave of non-binaryism that just suddenly came into existence? Yes. Did it maybe ride in the coattails of people like trans people who are very binary, who attempted to transition? Yes. Was it kind of hijacked? Yes. Does that mean that non-binary people don't exist? Of course not. Right? Of course non-binary people exist. Non-binary people existed for God knows how long. Since human history can be recollected. Right? Look at Shiva. You know, Shiva has aspects of both male and female. Krishna is very effeminate. Right? Look at you know, there's pictures in Tibet of Shakyamuni Buddha with breasts. It's symbolic. It's a metaphor, but Aleister Crowley, he had a nice set of moves. I don't know, like, but I think that there's definitely going to split. That is going to happen, right? Am I a transmedicalist? A medicalist? I don't think so. You know, some people may call me that, but the issue is, you know, the medical aspect to it. That is what the issue is, right? That, and like very, very conservative people who are fueled by ideas by religion, for example, who hate us, you know, or fiscal conservatives, or whomever. Imagine if you actually sat back and calculated the amount of money that a particular party blows in the run of a year on incredibly useless things. If you're able to actually get like a legitimate number, you're probably astronomical. Or on doing things like attempting to promote the party, you know, or underhanded things like funding the Daily Wire or something along that line. And, you know, and the other thing that really pisses me off about this is that, like, there's all kinds of trans girls, non-binary people, and whatnot out there, right? And whilst you have somebody like Hunter Schafer, right, out there portraying a role in a very popular TV show and providing representation, you're jumping all over for 4 exclamation marks. 4 exclamation marks. 4 exclamation marks. It's insane. Right? Is there not an issue there where between the differentiation between non-binary people and binary trans people, right? You know, is that not a medical, political, socio issue? Of course it is. Right? Does it not negatively impact us? Of course it does. Right? According to a recent Canadian survey, there are more non-binary people than there are binary trans people. Right? But you have to define what that is. Right? And you get certain circumstances like a lesbian who gets a double mastectomy, identifies as male, right? you know, and does not want to move further because it does not benefit him when he transitions. It does not benefit him necessarily maybe at some point in his life to move forward. You know, for someone like me, if I have a boyfriend or someone who is bisexual or something, right, and they like me with, right, you know, it may be in my best interest, because it is incredibly hard for someone like me to find a partner, you know, to date, you know, to keep my she-ness and keep this person happy, right? Maybe I'm a dominant personality, right? And I like being the dominant person in the relationship. You know, there are lots of like cisgendered women out there who are the dominant personality and want to be the dominant person in the bedroom, in the relationship, and the whole shebang, right? You know, maybe they want to keep their genitalia. Maybe they want to keep their genitalia because they don't see the point in going through a surgery because it scares the crap out of them, right? Maybe they're caught between a rock and a hard place, between hating it and worrying that they will never be able to be sexually functional again in any sort of way possible, right? That is something to weigh in and consider before you do that surgery. What about what happens after that surgery? How hard is it to find a partner? How hard does it maintain that all surgeries are wounds? Maintain that wound until it heals, right? And then maintain that beneficial thing the rest of their life, right? So it doesn't close up on them. You know, are you going to invest the time to dilate so it does not close up on you, right? What if you can't grow breasts, even if you're taking hormones? Because that happens to us, right? Like then you have to save up the money to get the breast augmentation. Should you do that? Is it wise to do a breast augmentation, right? Are there not negative side effects to doing breast augmentation? Of course there is. There's negative side effects to doing everything, right? You need to think things through and weigh the options, right? And if you logically, think about it logically, if I'm going to make my way through life and I'm never going to have another real relationship in my entire bloody life because I'm somebody who transitioned, which is a very real thing a lot of the time, right? You know, I make my way through the world with my face, not my genitalia, right? So it does not make sense for me to invest the money into my genitalia. It makes more sense for me to invest the money in my face. It makes more sense for me to do my face first and then my genitalia, right? Because I interact with the world with my face and my voice. You know, there's just, or what is somebody who maybe just decides to be, you know, I'm just a dude who wears dresses and makeup, right? Should I go the extra mile? There was a point when I was a femboy, and I was like, should I go the extra mile? Like, should I actually, like, can I stop myself from doing this? I couldn't stop myself from doing it. Right? But the dysphoria, you know, non-binary people may have some type of dysphoria, right? But logically, right? If you can make your way through the world with like a beard and breasts and proudly sport both, right? You do not have dysphoria. At least not in that regard. Like, would it make sense that you would have dysphoria around your genitalia at that point? it does not make any sense you would have dysphoria around your genitalia if you have no problem sporting beard and breasts. And I'm not laying any shame or shade on anybody, right, who is non-binary and, you know, has taken HRT and grown breasts, or is like a non-binary person like Jonathan Van Ness, who literally just walks around in a dress and some makeup. I don't take issue with it, right? But it's literally like you, when you're non-binary, you can literally just put on a dress and just say, I'm a they. You know, you can make your way through the world like that for as long as you wish to. Right? Maybe at some point you decide you want to make that gender change legal. That is just literally a legal gender change. Maybe it involves some hormones, right? But logically, if you have no issue with having a beard, right? Having breasts, not having breasts might not be that big of an issue alongside of it. Like I don't think you're going to blow your brains out, right? If you could not grow breasts, right, whilst having a beard. Do I take issue with somebody who has breasts and a beard? No. You know, not everybody's willing to go through the pain of laser hair removal or the electrolysis, right? Not everybody has the money to spend on that kind of thing. And that is why we need the government to step in, you know, in countries like Canada, where healthcare is public and funded through taxation, right? So that we can get the surgeries that we need, right? To live our lives and make our way through the world, right? Without wanting to blow our fucking brains out. Without having to wanting to blow our fucking brains out with every interaction of every person we come across, right? Because try as we may, we will never pass. And try as we may, we will never get the money to get the surgeries that we need, right? Thus, we can have bottom surgery, but we don't interact with the world with our genitalia, right? We interact with the world with our face, with our voice. But the Canadian government refuses to assist us with this, right? The Canadian government basically refuses to assist us with things like breast augmentation. They'll help trans men with breast mastectomies, but they won't help trans women with breast augmentation. Very rarely, you know, will the government help trans girls with breast augmentation. Even vocal training is so incredibly diverse and specific through province by province, right? It's like if I wanted to get successful voice training assisted by my government, I need to move to the province over, right? Our government has made it so difficult for us to successfully transition. You know, and in the case, like my case, you could say, well, why can't you just go back to being a dude? Go back to being a dude. You know, did you not have dysphoria as a dude? I did. And I buried that shit down in a deep, dark hole until a point in time came where it was like, if I don't do something, you know, to transition, I'm going to jump off my fucking balcony. And so, like, in a way, the Canadian government, with this census that it did, you know, I do not think that they're deliberately trying to go out and create a situation whereby, you know, we get negated. We get negated in the wake of two-spirit and non-binary people. I don't think that was a deliberate intention, right? Conversely, you can look at it and say, it could have been, It could have been a deliberate intention. Could have been a deliberate intention just to save money. And hence the jury is out on that. What that really meant. I tend to think they're attempting to be supportive by creating a form of solidarity. I think that's important, right? But there could be negative side effects of this visual of relating it to these two homosexual Native men. I don't know what their gender are, you know, who are popular throughout Canadian society for being in The Amazing Race. And one is known for being a doctor. Right? But that's not going to stop other people from taking it and using it against us. And jumping all over the person who provides you some level of representation through acting, that's not going to do you any good either.